Aaron Edwards, Santos Springs. Welcome to this week's edition of the Friday Field Report South America, April 10th, 2026. We're going to look at weather down there, rainfall. I'm going to tell you some of what I'm hearing from customers down there, and we're going to also look at their corn market. But the biggest headline is actually tied to what's going on in geopolitics, and it's really taking a toll on farmers down there. So we'll go over it all in just a minute, but let's start with weather. Let me go ahead and share the screen so we can talk about what they got in terms of rainfall and what's expected. So this chart, it shows past precipitation. Let me see if the red marker, actually let's go with black. There's an area here. So this is Paraguay, if you could see that black, and let's actually try to zoom in. This shows the rainfall from the last 7 days. That is Paraguay. This state right here is Mato Grosso do Sul. But I want to zero in on a region, which is, this is southern Mato Grosso do Sul, western Paraná, parts of Paraguay. This region right here is a pretty significant production region. It gets the western Paraná, it gets southern Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraguay, and that area has not really had enough rainfall for their double crop corn. And if you look at it, you say, well, it rained, what's the story there? Okay, but parts of that, it's not, they're coming off of dry weather, and it's not very much rain. It's something under an inch. So if you have hot and dry weather, and you get in half an inch, it helps, but it's not really enough. Similar stories in parts of Goiás. This is Goiás, similar situation here. And then also talk to customers here that are on the dry side. So the point that I'm trying to make is there are pockets where the corn crop is not looking great. There are pockets of concern. If you think of just interviews on the regular media channels out of Brazil, there's pictures of corn that's a little stressed. There's pockets where it's not that great. And if you say, okay, well, the rainfall chart looks okay. All right, but they had some dryness. It was planted outside the window, and then they had 1/4 of an inch, half an inch, maybe even an inch of rain last week. So they got a drink, but they're just not feeling very confident. And I asked this specific customer, he actually farms in a very good part of Paraná, and then he farms over in that window. He farms in southern Mato Grosso do Sul. He farms in 2 different regions. And I actually talked to him, and he said, listen, I'm concerned, but there is rain forecasted. So I'm not throwing in the towel yet, but I'm not saying for sure that there's yield loss, but I am concerned. Which brings us to our next chart. And I'm not sure what marker would look the best. Let's try red here. So this is forecasted rains for the upcoming 7 days. And we're gonna look at that same region of western Paraná, which would be over in here. It's southern Mato Grosso do Sul and Paraguay. And what you see is almost that entire region is getting some of it's getting just absolutely incredible amounts of rain, probably too much rain. But the specific regions that I was talking about, like right over in here and over in here, are getting at least, let's move that out of the way. They're getting at least, depending on where you're at, anywhere from, I'd say 1.5 to 3 inches of rain would catch a lot of those areas. So there is rain forecasted. Developmentally, it's just starting to flower. Most of the rain, most of the corn is not, tasseling yet. So if they get next week's rain, and then you know how fast crops can bounce back. By next week or 2 weeks from now, it'll be interesting to see if people are saying, well, I think we'll be okay. But this rainfall over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be important. And then late April and the first part of May, that rainfall is going to very likely be very important, but we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. So as we look back, there's definitely some corn regions that are stressed. But as we look forward to forecasted rains, it's looking like probably there will be adequate rainfall for that crop to recover. So from a production standpoint, soybean harvest is coming to an end. Corn planting, and we've been saying this, there's almost for sure 10% that was planted out of the window. Between 10 and 20% is likely that it was planted out the window, but it's kind of hard to, what exactly do you consider the window? What states do they go into? So between 10 and 20 would be vulnerable. 10 is definitely vulnerable. And about 80% is probably okay as far as planting date goes. Some of that 80%, or some of all of the production is planted in kind of these stressed areas with dryness, but they're expecting rain. So most of the corn down there is developing and likely will be okay as long as they get rainfall through pollination. We still got a ways to go before we can say that they will. The biggest story down there, we're going to wrap up, we're going to be talking about the corn market, but the biggest story down there that's affecting farmers financially is this right here. And I'm going to leave this in red. So I'm going to circle it down here. We'll zoom in on it. Then I'll tell you what we're looking at and we'll zoom back out right there. So this is the Brazilian currency. This is their BRL, that's the Brazilian currency, divided by the US dollar. That's what we're looking at right now. So it's down close to $5, 5 to 1, right? It takes 5 of the Brazilian currency for 1 US dollar. That's where we're at, we're close to. What really was, if you've been tracking along with this, one thing that I've mentioned was it's April, it's time to sell for cash flow. And the people that are late to their sales, the last Wednesday basically after the announcement on the Strait of Hormuz, when we saw the price of oil tank and we saw the dollar correct down, we saw their Brazilian currency gap lower. And so as we come into the end of the week, very, very, like the worst exchange rates, and that they've had a gap lower, new lows. Is just really hard. There's the gap, just absolutely heart-wrenching for farmers down there that still have to make sales and are right up against the deadline and holding off in hopes for better cash prices at the buzzer, and it just doesn't happen. But almost to add insult to injury, now we're going to zoom out. Just remember this number 5, it's under 510, right? Over here, 508. Now let's just zoom out, and I didn't even go back all the way. If we go back to maybe it was December of 2023, we got up to 630 on that exchange rate. But even just more recently, let me move that to the upper corner. Look at how much, even just since the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, this exchange rate was roughly, let's pull that over, roughly 560. And then now it's down there under 510. We're talking, that's about a 10% devaluation of the dollar, right? Or improvement to their Brazilian currency. That is a major, major factor for them when it comes in terms of pricing. So let's just say, I'll convert this to basis in soybeans because it'll make more sense. Let's say that you have $10 soybeans, but you have $1 under basis, right? So it lost $1 because the basis just absolutely collapsed. What it feels like to them is that they have been gradually, since January 1st, they've just been losing more and more value of, they export it and bring in less and less of their currency to pay their bills. And this is on the heels of really high diesel fuel prices, with the conflict. This is on the heels of a spike in nitrogen prices. Basis that is anywhere from $2 to $3 under the Chicago Board of Trade. Right as their bills are due, this is the exchange rate was actually bad this week for them, but it was probably emotionally even worse. Just that last punch in the gut. And it's no secret that they've been having record bankruptcies down there as well, as just this exchange rate has been really, really bad. Another thing just on politics, but this is an election year. And so what can be expected in terms of election? Will this thing go back up or will it just keep going down? It's a major story out there. The two markets that are affecting farmers down there the most are exchange rate this week. Exchange rate, and the next one that we're going to show you is their corn exchange down there. This is the, let me get a black marker here. So this is the cash settled corn on the B3 exchange, and I just picked out the July contract. So this is the B3, that's their exchange. And what this price is, it's Brazilian currency, and it's 60 kilogram sacks. That's how that's measured. So it's 73 reais per 60 kilogram sack is how you'd figure that up here, this example right here, right? So then if you want to figure that, I should have done the conversion here before we go, but it's roughly 5 to 1 right now. It was 5.6 at the beginning of the year on the exchange rate, and then you got to convert kilograms to bushels. But you don't need to understand all that number to understand this pricing. And what we've seen is the price of corn in Brazil has just absolutely collapsed. Part of that is the exchange rate the last 2 days, because as the exchange rate goes down, their corn becomes less competitive on the global market. So cash bidders can bid down and still buy corn. So as the exchange rate goes down, it also pulls the price of corn down. That's part of the issue. But the other thing is what we just look at, forecasted rains. Seasonality matters a lot. I place a high value on seasonality. It's one of the ways that we could stay disciplined in their seasonality. What I use with my customers in Brazil in terms of seasonality for corn, I say, hey, last day of March, that's a hard stop on our sales. And if you're wondering, oh, what is it in the US? How do you use seasonality? What are the hard stops where you want to make sure you get your sales done? So with the customers that I work with down there, we were selling an awful lot of corn in this window here. That's the window that we sold an awful lot of corn. And then, so pick out an average price, or you got an average sales price probably in this is where you get most of the customers with their average sale prices, maybe a little bit better than that. So right now, we're hedged or sold and the market's falling, and that's okay. But this is really a dramatic sale for farmers down there. It's just been a double whammy of exchange rate plus the price of corn down there plummeting, and it's just been absolutely grueling for them. Now, how hard can it fall? Very likely goes back down to harvest lows, and this price would not be anywhere. I mean, that would not be abnormal or even lower as we approach harvest. Harvest down there is still a ways away. We'll start getting some safrinha, some double crop corn harvest probably in June, but the big months are July and August for their double crop corn harvest. That's when most of the corn will be harvested. August and even August is a big sales month for their corn down there. Beginning in July, we'll start getting some summer competitiveness out of them with their cheap corn. But again, if their exchange rate stays low, we say it, hey, the weaker dollar is good for our exports, but this is exactly what it feels like to competitors. It's like, man, my grain isn't worth anything because the dollar is weak. And then here in the US, we don't really notice it as much. We just say, oh, export's a little bit better. But if you're on the other side of this buying it, you really feel it. Man, that weaker dollar, that makes it really tough to compete with US corn exports. So there's a lot of moving headlines, a lot of moving parts. We have a volatile market. The Brazilian corn crop still isn't guaranteed, but weather looks friendly, and they just need probably a month still of good weather, but every week helps as they clip along. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your, great weekend. And if you are looking for help making your grain decisions, you want to know what seasonally matters in your operation, when you need to be setting your pricing objectives, both from a pricing standpoint as far as seasonality and the position of the funds, don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great weekend.